Vice Chancellor Professor Mohsen Al-Abadi, Dean of the Faculty of Education Professor Ali Al-Haji, Dean Associates, Head of Department of English, my colleagues, our dear guests, and our dearest students. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is such a great honor and privilege as I stand before you today, opening the Department of English second seminar that is focusing closely on some linguistic and literary aspects related to Imam al-Hussein and his everlasting, still affecting and very much drawing our future, that is Al-Tough battle. For two reasons, I consider the present seminar as a special one. First is the millions of lovers who are marching down the streets at the moment, heading toward the tomb of the father of the freemen. Thus, old men, old women, kids, and even babies in their trams are actually coming from different parts of this country and beyond, carry the same identification card, that is the genuine love to Imam Hussein and his companions. It is the love that absolutely would bring us to salvation, since Imam Hussein is the ship of survival. Indeed, the marching millions remind us of our academic, humanistic, and moral duties towards the people and our country in following Imam Hussein's footsteps in the path of justice, freedom, and honorable life that would eventually grant us Allah's mercy. The second reason is that we are honored this year to have with us as a keynote speaker Professor Hassan Abbas, whom will be formally introduced later by my colleagues. So we would like to extend our sincere thanks and heartfelt appreciation for his invaluable participation. Also, we are very much indebted to our distinguished guest from the Iraqi Translators Association for offering to be with us on this occasion. The best segment to begin our seminar with is listening to some recitations from the glorious Quran by Hadi Abdullah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. سلام الله عليكم جميعا ورحمته وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر والأنثى إن سعيكم لشتى فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسرى وأما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد.
I will leave the floor to Professor Ali Al-Haji to deliver his speech on this occasion.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السيد ممثل السيد رئيس جامعة الكوفة الأستاذ الدكتور محسن العبادي، المحترم مساعد رئيس الجامعة للشؤون العلمية، الضيف الكريم البروفيسور الدكتور حسن عباس المحترم، السيد رئيس قسم اللغة الانكليزية وعلوم القرآن والاقسام الاخرى، الساده المعاونون، التدريسيون الافاضل، الطلبه النجباء، السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. من دواعي الفخر والسرور ان تحتضن كليه التربيه في طليعه انشطتها للعام الدراسي 2017-2020 شخصيه مرموقه طالما سمعنا عنها كثيرا، وطالما جالت بلدان العالم لتنقل افكار اهل البيت سلام الله عليهم الى الغرب. اليوم نحتضن هذه الشخصيه لينقل لنا راي الغربيين عن الامام الحسين سلام الله عليه، ولنجول في دراسات لغويه وادبيه حول واقعه الطف، هذه الواقعة العظمى التي ما زالت تمر عبر هذه السنين، ونحن حقيقة نستلهم كل يوم قيم البطولة والفداء والرجولة والشهامة والإباء من الإمام الحسين عليه السلام. وما أحوجنا في هذه الأيام إلى أن نأخذ العبر والدروس لينعكس على سلوكنا وأخلاقنا ومبادئنا وقيمنا. وما أحوجنا أيضا في هذه الظروف أن نستلهم من الإمام الحسين الوحدة والتضحية والفداء. فنحن اليوم أمام هذه المشاركة العلمية الرائعة إن شاء الله، والتي تفتتح كلية التربية أنشطتها بها، متمنين دوام التوفيق لقسم اللغة الانكليزية ولجميع الأساتذة والطلبة، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
I may kindly ask Dr. Mohammed Bayat to deliver her speech on this occasion.
All praise be to Allah Almighty, and may His peace and blessings be upon the noblest of prophets and messengers, our Prophet Muhammad and his purified progeny. Dear Mr. Vice Chancellor of the Scientific Affairs and Higher Studies, Dr. Mohsen Al-Abadi, dear distinguished guest Professor of International Relations at the Near East South Asia Strategic Studies Center, National Defense University in Washington, D.C., Dr. Abbas Hassan, Mr. Director of the Iraqi Translators Association in Najaf, Mr. Kadhim Al-Abadi, and his staff members, Mr. Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Dr. Ali Khair Haji, the Mr. Assistant Dean for the Scientific Affairs of Higher Studies, Dr. Hassan Al-Ka'bi, Mr. Assistant Dean for Legal and Administrative Affairs, Mr. Sami Al-Hawi, dear attendees, colleagues, and students, peace be upon you all. At the time of the annual pilgrimage journey, where the processions of hearts and minds are creeping on feet towards the holy shrine of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, we in the Department of English try to highlight various secrets gained from the martyr of freedom, as we got inspiration from Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein not as a person, but a project, not an individual, but a process, and not a word, but a standard. Indeed, on behalf of the organizing committee, it is really an honor and a pleasure to welcome you all in our first symposium in the academic year 2019-2020, entitled Linguistics and Literary Readings in Al-Taf, which is held in cooperation with the Iraqi Translators Association in Najaf. Actually, This symposium is aiming at providing a platform for discussion and sharing ideas, an opportunity to share research and practices in both linguistics and literature about Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, and Al-Taf. Promoting connections between theory and practice and exploring different perspectives on the application of research findings into practice as far as our symbol of freedom and dignity against tyranny and slavery. That's to say, Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, is concerned. And emphasizing the idea that the events that took place in Karbala many centuries ago still arouse pain as the tragedy of the battle fought between forces presenting good and evil, light and darkness is recalled. In fact, we'd especially like to thank our guests, especially our distinguished guest, Professor Dr. Hassan, and also for sure for accepting our invitation. Thanks a lot, Dr. Hassan. And Mr. Kazem Al-Abadi also to hold this academic gathering and present research works on different aspects of both linguistics and literature, and for their participation to enrich our symposium. A great gratitude is due to Mr. Dean of the Faculty of Education for his invaluable support. I would like to thank my dear colleagues in the Department of English for their hard work and seriousness in doing their task, as most of the work has been done by the organizing committee. Have a great symposium time, and thanks a lot. Thank you.
I will turn it over now to Dr. Naam Al-Bayati and Dr. Liya Al-Janabi to chair these sessions, please.
It is a think tank focusing on intersection of U.S. foreign policy and Muslim geopolitics. His current research work focused on building narratives for countering political and religious extremism and rule of law reform in developing states.
And that's a question for us to think about. And this is in terms of message of Karbala. What is it in the message of Karbala that whether it is Daesh in Syria or Al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia or Taliban in Afghanistan or Boko Haram in Nigeria or some other movement of Islamic movement of Uzbekistan in Uzbekistan, each one of those at their core are anti-Shia or anti-Ahlul Bayt. Why is that so? What was the central message in Islam which damage or which challenge all these extremists, whether they are in Africa or Asia or elsewhere?
Presentation was excellent and it was a great start for the year with you, Dr. Hassan. Thank you very much. And also thank you for giving the faculty along with the recommendation of how to reject the case of or the lesson of Imam Hussein case. So I just want to ask you, gentlemen, what is the general concentration of Imam Hussein in Western India? This is my first question, and my second question is the oppressor and the oppressed. Dichotomy is always in place and was used in the political speeches for their own agenda and their own benefits. So can you give us on these two questions, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for raising, especially the second question, which is a very important one. But first, about the first briefly, and again through an anecdote. I think 7 or 8 years ago, I thought that on the day of Ashura, there should be some opinion pieces, articles in American press about Karbala.
Sure, all of you know what is meant by al-Majalis al-Husayniyya. And actually here, nothing to be right on this slide. Just to tell you that nothing can be sufficient to describe what is meant by al-Majalis al-Husayniyya. Already know that al-Majalis al-Husayniyya just revival the tragedy of Karbala and the great sacrifice of Imam Hussein and what we get from Al-Taf battle. But when I dig deep in al-Majalis al-Husayniyya, the technicality, the exact performance, the message, the essential aim of المجالس الحسينية and compare these things with my theatrical reading, I find that there are some sort of similarity with the المجالس الحسينية and certain international theaters.
So according to Oxford Dictionary, catharsis is a process used to relieve from all the emotions that are repressing and affecting. According to Pelling, it is an act of performance in tribal societies. There are certain tribal societies who lack the ability to receive what is recorded through writing or through different devices. So what they need someone to perform certain acts or certain movements. So that's why catharsis can be reached through these acts. According to Ryan, which is the closest to our topic, catharsis can be collective, which means community having the same mentality. Here collective means jam'i or something related to kifai. Share the same purpose for using catharsis that could be repeated over time in a regular way as a matter, as the same matter as with the Husseini tragedy.
Imam Hussein was killed with his family, then old men, women, and children. His tents were burned. His women and children were led to Al-Kufa and then to Al-Sham. He was left alone. His head was severed and raised on the spurs. This is in brief what happened in the Battle of Al-Taf. Now we come to Al-Taf battle between history and theatrical arts. In general, the theatrical art has been established, we say. If we want to give time to the theatrical art, then it is, or we can mark this to the establishment of the Gilgamesh, the epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia. And this would, contradict the rumor which says that the Greeks were first to act or to present something about theatrical art. Okay. In all cases, theater art originated based on religion and metaphysical forces. Now, for us, we believe that the theatrical art or theatrical phenomenon originated in Iraq with its primitive rituals since the 10th of Muharram in 61 Hijri.
Okay, we can say that Imam Hussein is recommended to be read from a contemporary point of view, as the new generations need to look at him as a model. Number two, to meet the requirements of the age, we need to read Imam Hussein as objectively as possible. However, this does not mean neglecting the emotional and passionate aspects of Ashura as the day of Imam Hussein. And as we had mentioned in one of the researchers' topics, which he talked about Hussein's preachers and others who are involved with Al-Taf battle. So it seems to be very important to look at and to read whatever mentioned about Imam Hussein as objective as possible, and I hope that. Number three, encouraging researchers to investigate in linguistics, literary, political, social, psychological, and moral lessons and aspects of Al-Taf battle. Number four, such studies could be encompassed in a conference, whether national or international, to be held annually in Muharram or Safar. And I hope also this to be established and to be managed. Number five, the last one, it is possible to correspond with institutions, centers, and universities to have co-sessions via Skype or video conference or whatsoever available online media to introduce Imam Hussein to the world. Thank you for bringing this dynamic exposition to our symposium. And once again, I thank you all very much and hope to see you in the near future in the coming events. Thanks a lot.